give you some tips and some tricks about coloring with Stampin Blends. So it's probably one of the coloring mediums that I get the most questions about. And some people love them, some people not so much. I love them. So let me show you my tips and tricks. Maybe they'll help you if you struggle. And let's get started. This is the card that I'm going to demonstrate for the use to color. And we're going to color this chair. What are these called? Adirondack chairs? I can't say that right. Adirondack chairs, I think. This is from the Relaxing Waterside bundle. And this paper is, I forget the name of the paper. Waterside Retreat, I think, which I believe is the name of the suite also. A lot of times the designer paper, they give the designer paper the same name as the suite, and then they give the bundle, the dies and the stamps, a little bit coordinating name, we'll call it. But this is a card we're going to make, and I have much of it already put together. I thought I'd just show you quickly before we start coloring the paper, because I know it's always difficult to sometimes see what paper looks like online or in the catalog, and it's much easier to see it shown live. So I've used a lot of this. So I've got it in pieces, but one of the sheets has all of these beautiful scenes on it, which is basically means no work for us, right? I love this one down here. I can't wait to use that. I had cut this apart because I wanted to use the other side, but here's looks like a little storefront with an ice cream shop, a lake, picture of a lake, and a fisherman maybe. So that's one of the sheets. The opposite side is this nautical stripe, I'd call it. Then we've got some pretty fish, which has water on the back. I'm going to use this one today. It's a bunch of, I don't know what you call them, life rings. And I think these are things you toss to somebody if they're struggling in the water. Hopefully I never have to use those. There's a nice soft wood grain color on here. And here's another stripe. On the back of this one, we've got a lot of life jackets and paddles. And then this one is birds. Seagulls, I think, which I'll be honest, are not my favorite birds because they tend to like to sit on the cover of your boat or if you have a hoist, and they make a mess. I love the plaid. This is pretty for cards, but just don't like the birds. And then we've got some bikes, a little bit different theme from all the water and some more birds on the back. So that is the Waterside Retreat Designer Series paper. So let's just go ahead and start coloring our chair. I have it already stamped. I stamped it in black memento and I die cut it. There's a coordinating die. Now I'm going to pull my little stool over here because I can't stand in color. I have to sit when I color. I don't know why. So I hope I can keep this in the frame since I can't look very well into my camera. But let's get started. I'm going to use gray granite. That's what I used on this one. And Stampin' Blends all come in a dark version and a light version. And the way I typically do it is I tend to start with my dark and I color in where I want my highlights to be, or I shouldn't say highlights, I should call them shadows, right? Because it's really the parts that's in shadow. So one of the things before you start, think about where your light source is coming from. Which direction are you on your card? Do you want your light to come from this way or do you want it to come from this way? And sometimes the best way to tell where it probably is meant to come from with the stamp is where did the designer put the shadows. So you can see here they've got shadows back here. There's some shadow a little bit here. There's some shadow under the arm. This one doesn't have a lot of shadows, but it has some. So it looks like the intention is the sun is coming from this direction. So I'm going to start with my dark gray granite, and I'm just going to shadow in some of those areas. You can use your brush end or your bullet end for this, whichever you like. If you're coloring lines, it's the bullet end tends to work best for me. Now, I think ends of wood are usually always darker, so I'm going to color those in. And then when I have like an edge around a piece, like on the edge of the arm here, I usually make that a little darker. This leg would be in shadow. But before I get too far ahead of myself, I do recommend that you work in small areas so you don't give the ink too much time to dry. You can always come back and put another coat. But if you say, let's work on this leg down here first. So I've added the shadow. And then I usually start from the shadow and color towards the light. And you might have to go over it where the line ends. Just kind of do it a few times, and that will help it to blend when the ink gets a little bit wetter. Okay. So then let's come up here in this shaded area, and I'm going to do the same thing. Start with the dark and go towards where the light is going to be. And typically, depending on what I'm coloring, this is wood. So in this case, wood normally has a grain direction, correct? So I tend to color in the direction of the grain. And that just, you don't want it to, you want it to look like what it's meant to look like. So, all right, I've got, and here's a little, now you do want to keep these on because you don't want them to dry out. They dry out fast enough. Here's a dark piece down here. That's the back leg. So this leg kind of in shadow here. Now I'm thinking my light's this way. So that means this back edge is probably in shadow. So I just continue working section by section. And not every section is going to need a whole lot of shading. If you have really small objects or small spaces, you don't need to spend a whole lot of time blending. This back is pretty much, for the most part, going to be all hit by the light. So doesn't need a lot of shading. I do like to play with my shading. I'm going to say this bottom piece down here is a little darker probably than the ones up here where the sun is going to hit. So I add a little dark. And maybe you can see and maybe you can't. But when I color, I tend to make short strokes. And at the end of my stroke, I lift a little bit. If I exaggerate, I can do that. But that tends to just help with the blending so you don't get lines where you stopped. And you can put more than one coat on to help a little bit. If you want to place like this leg down here looks like it should be probably a little dark under there. So I go back, add some dark. I think the main thing with coloring is you kind of just want to relax, enjoy the process. And I'm going to make this dark because I'm assuming this is under the arm. So it's going to be in shadow, a little more shadow here. This one also, I'm going to add some shadow. And I go back and forth frequently. I don't just color the whole thing and call it done. And that's why I do like to work in smaller areas. And I will put multiple coats on some areas just to darken them, even with the light one. So I'm going to give it a little bit of shadow down here at the bottom, just so I've got my dark. Now you can use for these larger areas. I know some people prefer to use the bullet end. I think you have a little bit more control, but I will tell you the brush end will give you a better blend. And so now I'm going to start at the dark, and I'm just going to color up towards the top, overlapping my darker shading color, because you can see then, if I just go once, you can still see that line. But if I make short strokes going over the bottom and bringing it up, now that line has disappeared. Hopefully you can see that. I'm not sure how well you can see what I'm doing here. I need to have zoom capability. That's what I need. And again, I'm going in, always coloring in the direction of the grain of the wood in this case, because it is wood. If you're coloring maybe a cute little animal or something and they have fur, color in circles because it'll look more like fur. So the direction that you color, keep in mind what you're coloring if you want to make, and if you want it to look more like fur, you probably want to use the bullet end. Now, sometimes these things are hard to get apart. So a hint about that. You always want to push flat. You want to push till it clicks because that means it's closed. Sometimes if you just try to pull it apart, it's really hard. So I kind of put my hands together like that and use it as a lever, pushing my hand and kind of pulling at the same time. Hard to explain, but it helps to get them apart. So there is our chair. So let's go ahead and let's just finish up our card. I said I was going to use a little bit different designer paper. I used the nautical stripes and the life preserver thingies, the floaty things. So we're going to put this down here. And did I put this on with dimensionals? I did. So that means if I want this whole thing to raise up over this, I need one layer of dimensionals up here and two down here at the bottom, because this is already up with dimensionals. If you didn't pop this up with dimensionals, then you can just put one everywhere. So think about that when you start layering things. So down here, which is going to be off from this, I need two layers of dimensionals. And just pile them, just stack them. Okay. Now I think I should have, where's the arm fall? Up here. So I feel like I should have a little bit of support up here, maybe on this arm. That's kind of a large unsupported area. Everything else I think will be okay. So let's just go ahead and set this down here. Now I didn't put this down kind of for a reason, because I'm going to put my little sentiment down here. Here's the stamp set. So you can see there are some nice sentiments. There's a birthday, Father's Day, Dad. We don't get those too often in too many sets. Here's a couple more seagulls. We've got a book. Here's our little cup of coffee. Couple different sizes of grass. today is your day. So that would work for a birthday, Father's Day, whatever, right? Or just dad for whatever. But we're using the relax, and I'm going to pop this up with dimensionals on the back. That will come under the leg. And I could put a dimensional between here and the leg, but I don't think it's necessary. So you can see I did scoosh the relax. This is made with a perennial postage die. I did scoosh the die over so my relax was to the left side of my, or to the right side of my die cut. Now, what I didn't pay attention to is where I put these dimensionals. I wanted them near the bottom. We're going to work with it because I'm going to tuck some grass under there. I've got two little grass stamped with old olive, one full strength, one stamped off, and we're just going to tuck these right under here. And I'm going to put the one closest in here. I'm going to adhere that directly, and I'm just going to adhere the bottom. I'm going to take this with my fingers and just curl it a little bit so the grass will lift like it's blowing in the breeze. And it comes and catches over the edge of the bobbers, we'll call them, or the life preservers, whatever they are. I don't know what they are. I know the one's a life ring, but I don't know what those other things are. And this one I'm going to pop up with a couple tiny dimensionals. And we'll just overlap. That just gives a little bit more dimension to the grass. And again, this one can be curled a little bit as well. Just bend it carefully with your fingers. You could use your bone folder. And that's our card. Oh, no, it's not. We forgot our coffee. So I have coffee on here, or tea, whatever you might like. And I'm just going to stick that right on here. So I'm going to put a little adhesive just at the bottom edge where it'll sit on the arm. And then at the top, because it's hanging off from the arm, I'm going to put a small dimensional. It's probably overkill, but I always try to think about dimensionals when it's going to go through the mail, and I don't want everything, it's going to get flattened out, right? So I want to put dimensionals to try to hold it in place. So there we go. This was colored with Pool Party Stampin' Blends. Again, this one's tiny, tiny, so you don't, a lot of shading's not really necessary. And these little cute little anchors come as part of the suite, and I just use some baker twine to tie it in place, wrapped around 3 times. The hint here is I wrapped 3 times, and then I tied a knot, like a double knot, square knot, good knot, and then I fed it through. There's a hole in the top of the anchor so that I could just tie that there. I still did use a glue dot to hold that in place because it wanted to twist and turn where I didn't want it. So the glue dot just held it where I wanted it to be. So there we go. And I have the inside already finished. And that's it. I hope those tips helped with coloring with blends. I used designer paper here on this one. On the other one, on my flap, I've stamped a bunch of grass. Okay. And you're probably wondering why these are shiny. We're going to make this card in my stamp camp this month. And they're going to make this one. And so I protect them. That way I don't have to worry about getting them laid on an ink pad, because that's what I do. So, all right, let's go ahead. And I don't know which one you like best. I think they have a very different feel. This one is a little brighter, maybe cheerier with the darker colors. This one is soft, very relaxing looking. I think a dad would love to get either one of them. I know my dad would have. So let me flip back. All right, I think I'm back. I hope those tips helped. If you have questions about what I did, I do have a tutorial for the card this card that will be on my blog tomorrow. And all those tips that I gave you for coloring under the technique section, I did document and write down all those tips that I could think of. The one thing I didn't mention is practice. Practice. It does help. And just stamp any old images and just start. You don't even have to do them in great colors. Just practice the blending and kind of get used to the brush lift and pick up, lift and pick up. I think that'll help with your blending. If you're getting a lot of lines when you color, which some of my stampers have indicated that's what they have trouble with, it doesn't seem to want to blend. Try those tips. Until next week, thank you for watching. Have a great week. God bless. I'd love it if you give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel would be awesome. And we will see you next week with something else.